but what kind of swag you would like to see as a member in 2021. Well, we seem pretty divided here as a group, so there's interesting results. Last year, of course, we did the membership card for 2020. It does seem like a t-shirt may take lead there. Moving forward, we'll keep that in consideration as you pay your 2021 dues. And if you've already paid them, you will get whatever swag we send out. It won't just be for people who pay after today. So thank you for that. Moving on with our speakers that we have tonight. First of all, we do have District Court Judge C. Renee Little. First of all, y'all, I love C. Renee Little. This is her third time being here in the past year, I'll just note. One of the best compliments I received throughout all of 2020 is when Judge Little called me a co-conspirator. So I just want to say that she is a native Charlottean. She's an active community advocate serving for Race Matters for Juvenile Justice. She's the founder of the Juvenile Court Youth Summer Enrichment Program and the Youth Empowerment Fair. She has spoke last year several times, including leading our implicit bias training. And I would just like to welcome back to our chapter, Judge C. Renee Little.
Thank you so much to my Democratic family and all who love equity and justice for all people, all God's creatures. I think that's so important to say that, not just as a judge, but as a daughter of Earth. I love being here. I appreciate it. You have an amazing president in Cameron, and I wish whomever will take on that mantle well, because not that you have big shoes to fill, because I know everyone brings something to the table, but Cameron, you rock. You've done an amazing job as a leader of our community, not just as a leader of the LGBTQ Dems, but in our community and with our party. You do our party and our community so well, and so thank you so much. I want to speak briefly to my fellow Democrats. 3 E's, I love alliteration. Cameron may know this, but I was a theater arts and speech communication major. Always loved the dramatic aspect of litigation. That's probably why I went to law school. I believe that as lawyers, and now even as judges, as lawyers, you tell stories. You tell stories in serving your community and serving your client. And as judges, we hear stories. We see people, but we need to hear them. Justice is blind, but my ears should always be open. So I've gone from being a storyteller to someone who now listens to stories. And I still have a voice based on how I treat people, the questions I ask them, how I lean into them, how I listen to them. So I wanted to speak about 3 things as I am growing in my knowledge and my scholarship in service as a servant leader. And that's education, that's engagement, and that is empathy. Education, engagement, and empathy. I cannot speak for all judges, all leaders, but I know when it comes to myself and my work as a judge, as a daughter of this community, those are so key. I'll go ahead and give the disclaimer. Judges cannot talk about political issues. I don't think justice and equity are political issues. Justice to me isn't political. It's what this country is based on. So I love talking about justice. So when it comes to education, please let me just first tell you, our courts are still operating. We are, I want to say, modified schedule. Some things have been modified. We are doing weddings 5 days a week, but you have this from 2 to 4, and you have to get an appointment. We have a new Chief Justice, Justice Newby, and we hope that everyone will continue to pray for our court system and that our leaders from the highest office that we serve well and that we're mindful of all people. So please keep him and his administration in your prayers. But under our new leadership, some things have changed. Some of our administrative orders have extended, but what Chief Justice Newby is really wanting, what's a little different is that he's really letting each county and the judicial leadership of each judicial district really determine what their needs are. So I would encourage each and every person to go to www.nccourts and look up Mecklenburg to find out specifically what are the court closings, what's going on. One of the biggest things is that we're virtual. We do not want people in the courthouse unless they need to be there. One of the things I would ask you to help us educate our community about is people will be getting notices in the mail. We're still sending things to people's address, but they're going to really have to call the courts so that we can get their email addresses, so that we can tell them about the WebEx process. I'm big on access to justice, and I care about the digital divide, but we also care about safety. And so what at least I can say our judges have been doing is, I think we've been very gracious if we don't see people right away, giving people the benefit of the doubt, to make sure people have been appropriately served notice about court before we hold them accountable or do anything that will look punitive. And so I'm proud of my colleagues for that. But please help us educate people to say the courts are still running, but it's virtual, which means you need a phone, you need a computer. We have found ways to help people in that process. So as many of you know, there is a CDC order regarding evictions. There's still some things we're doing. When it comes to that CDC order, people need to read it and understand it's really about failure to pay rent. Violating your lease and some other things are not necessarily a part of that CDC order. So education is important. People need to understand the courts are still running. Some things can't stop. Domestic violence issues are still happening. So I get calls in the middle of the night with people wanting ex parte orders for safety. So we don't want people to think that our courts are closed. When it comes to education, it's also important that judges are engaged in the process of learning always about equity. I'm so grateful that Cameron gave me an opportunity to come to this very space and talk about race matters for juvenile justice and implicit bias. I'm excited to know that that is something that's still a mandate, something that our court system cares about. That's part of some of the trainings that are even happening through the School of Government. One of the first things I did was sign up for the National Association of Women Judges, because I think it's important as a judge that diversity and inclusion means me knowing more about what's going on in Mecklenburg, right? Being educated, learning from others who do this work, who do not look like me, who might not even have the same political ideology. So I'm really proud of doing that work. And I don't know, raise your hands. I think you've got your thumb signs, but one of the things I've also done to stay engaged in education and equity is, I don't know if you've heard about the 21-day challenge. And a lot of different organizations have done those. But I was really excited to participate, not in one, not in two, but in 3 different racial equity 21-day challenges, both with members of the clerk's office and other court leaders. And so to me, educating yourself about equity, understanding what different people go through, understanding intersectionality when it comes to race, gender, orientation, status, those are things that are important because I serve all people. I serve all people. I don't have to look like you to listen to you and to understand what your issues are. So that's something that's been big for me. So educating the public about what's going on with our courts, but me educating myself about equity consistently. Even though I've been doing this work now for years, I'm doing challenges. I'm still signing up for different classes that we're having for judges. And I am staying in that space and hold me accountable to it. Engagement is what we're doing now. We got to talk to our neighbors. You know, if you are just in the robe all day and you come home and you're not on a call with your LGBTQ brothers and sisters, or you're not serving the community, you're not reading to some child, you're not engaged, how can you serve a community you don't know anything about? And so for me, engagement is key. Please stay engaged, especially with our young people. Young people are doing amazing things. I sent Cameron some materials today about diversity and a legal fair that's coming up at the bar. And often when people think diversity, they think race. And although race is near and dear to me, I want us to be mindful when it comes to young people that we're intentional about reaching out to all type of young people. You know, if you haven't reached out to a young person, especially in this community, who may be interested in the law, I would encourage you to do so, right? We need more young people in this space who identify as LGBTQ, and they need to be, if they're interested in the law, these are the opportunities they should have. So Cameron, please share that information with your networks. If you have if you know a young person in this space, let them know, because when we think diversity, we shouldn't just always think about race and brown and dark faces. We should be thinking about life experience. So I really want to make sure we're sharing that information with young people, also sharing that information with timeout youth, the relatives and other spaces where there are marginalized youth, to let them know that there are opportunities for them to start thinking about the legal profession, especially if they want to advocate or they want to change things. And finally, empathy. You know, Cameron asked me to talk about what are you doing to make sure that equity is advanced. One of the things that I have to consistently do is make sure that my empathy bone is stretched, even for my, well, I don't say enemies, even for those who don't often see the light. And that's not a political thing. I'm just saying people who, they just disagree. You know, we're human beings, we disagree. But I want to have empathy for all situations. There was someone who passed away today. I shall not name his name. But I saw on social media that there are a lot of people who, you know, some were happy that he, you know, that he gone on. I ain't gonna say the glory. I don't know where he at, but you know, he was a controversial figure. And I just remember the first thing I thought was, well, some people will not be traumatized by views anymore. But I thought about his family. I was like, you know what? Because we're all someone's child. We are someone's partner, someone's husband, wife, lover, sister, brother. You're someone's neighbor. And so I am always being mindful, in addition to being educated about equity and educating the community about our courts and staying engaged in community activities to know my neighbors. I have to be empathetic. And that's not always easy. That's not always easy. But you know what? I don't know how you can serve people if you're not willing to not only listen, but sometimes, if not put yourself in their shoes, at least understand how their shoes are made. And so it's a work in progress for me. Hold me accountable. So that is my challenge to Curtisia Renee Little. You see, I like y'all because I told you my first name. Now everybody know what SC stands for. Now don't go spread it around necessarily. But that's my challenge, is I want to stay educated. I want to educate the community about our court system. I want to stay engaged with my neighbors. And I want to always lead with empathy. I should not be judging people if I'm not willing to see their humanity, whether they win or lose a case.
Thank you so much, as always, Judge Little, for your wisdom, experience, passion. I just know our courts are in safe hands with leaders like you on the bench. We do have a question from Laurel. So I just wanted to know about networking with other communities. Yeah.
Yes, so actually, I started in this space through RMJJ with working with MeckDems right after the Charleston killings and murders. I was actually brought in with the MeckDems director at the time, and we facilitated a host of community conversations that was covered in the Observer. And MeckDems was phenomenal because it brought in different faith traditions and even people who don't identify with faith. And so that was a great thing to do, to start those facilitations for our community. There are others who are still doing that work. I will say this, I am still working with RMJJ. I do want to make sure that, though, as I'm leading and doing this work with our neighbors, that, I'm a judge, it's who I am, but I have to always make sure that I'm not doing anything that looked like I would be taking away from my job time, right? So a lot of the things I engage in, they're after work hours. Now, I don't stop being a judge. I still get calls for ex parte orders, but I'm always mindful that when I'm on the public's time, I'm doing what you pay me to do. But when it's my time, after 5, I am still engaging with our brothers and sisters. So I look forward to us re-engaging MeckDems. And there's not only MeckDems, but with under Reverend Rodney Sadler, there are other faith-based organizations. So when I say faith-based, these are inclusive, right? So you don't have to necessarily, I think, identify with the faith to be connected and plugged in. But there are other faith leaders in this community that are about this business and that care about equity across all spaces. And so I'm happy to partner with them and for them to be allies and co-conspirators, because I'll be frank with you, I think when we're more mindful about equity in one area, it makes us incredibly mindful about equity across all spaces. At least that's been my experience. Any other questions?
I don't see any more in the chat, and I'm just going to make sure I don't see any hands raised. Mason and Cameron Joyce too, if you'll just keep eyes out too to make sure that I'm not missing. But again, thank you so much for your time, Judge Little. We really
Yes.
appreciate, again, her third time in the past year. I don't think very many speakers have that distinction. So again, free time that she has spent with us, and we just appreciate it so much. Thank you again.
Oh, I'm gonna keep coming back. The meetings are fire. I'm mad I missed January, but you will see me consistently. I love the work you're doing. I love that you are keeping your eye on advancing equity for all people. And I appreciate that. That's all I'll say about that.
Thank you again so
Thank you
much,
for having
Judge
me, sir.
Little. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Oh, message. So I just want to again thank Judge Little for being with us. And moving forward, our next speaker, who I think I did see join in, so I will spotlight him in just a moment. Jeff Jackson, of course, is no stranger to anyone in Mecklenburg County. Senator Jackson is a veteran, former assistant district attorney, current member of the National Guard, most famously being recalled days before his re-election last November. He was the second youngest member elected to the General Assembly. One of his biggest passions that he's continuing to focus on, of course, is the atrocious gerrymandering that Republicans have done on this state time and time again when given the opportunity. So we really appreciate him taking the time to speak with us tonight, especially, of course, after he was just reelected. So I'll hand it over to State Senator Jeff Jackson.
Cameron, thanks. Good to see all of you. So many friends that I've known for years now. Judge Little, wonderful to see you as well. I am clearly in transit, or I was recently until I stopped to speak with all of you. Trying something new, a new type of campaign that some of you may have seen about, and it's got me on the road a little bit, but more than happy to stop and talk to all of you. I was thinking about what to talk about, and what I kept thinking about was the number of times that I've been embraced by the LGBT community, and how easy it is to embrace a community that has embraced you so often. It started right after I joined the state Senate. My district then encompassed neighborhoods like Noda and Plaza Midwood, and my constituents just made it very clear to me. I remember the 5 minutes after I was appointed, after the announcement, it was already being made very clear to me that LGBT equality needed to be something that I took very, very seriously. That issue advocacy was probably the first issue advocacy that I was on the receiving end of as a very new and very young state senator. But then it just ramped up from there. I remember going to celebrate marriage equality on the steps of the courthouse when that announcement came down, playing kickball with Stonewall Kickball, going to Timeout Youth and speaking to their graduations, and working with Rodney Tucker, who I think as of 6 months ago, moved on from that position. The HRC galas, where I get to wear a tuxedo one time every single year and just have a wonderful time. The wonderful work that Johnny Johnson did and that Dan Money did, both becoming good friends, and just the warmth that they had. There have just been so many times where I thought, oh, and one of the pinnacles of my life for the last 7 years, I got to be Grand Marshal of the Pride Parade. That was outstanding. I recommend it to anybody. If it's ever offered to you, do it. It's a heck of a good time. And just being in those moments and in those conversations and thinking, I wish everyone could experience this. I wish they could experience the warmth and the love and the sincerity and the decency, and how that would melt certain people's anger and hostility and mistrust, and would immediately reshape the politics around this. That reaching the heart that just overcomes all of the propaganda and politics that gets thrown in the way intentionally as roadblocks. That's just my personal experience for the last few years. Of course, we can talk policy and we can talk politics. You know, we still need an Equality Act. And I want to be sure and thank Representative Tricia Cotham, who I know isn't on here, but before I got to the General Assembly, she was filing workplace equality every single year. She's been a longtime champion here. I'm pretty sure Concetta and Ginger are on this call, because why wouldn't they be? Of course they are. They're the longtime advocates in this space, who I met before I was joined the state Senate. They're there's just a real recognition of how many people have come before and done incredible work. And I just want to thank all of you for inviting me into this community and into this advocacy and making me feel like there are some issues where there is simply a right and a wrong. There are some issues that are more complicated than that, and you have to balance certain interests. But there are a handful of issues that come down to simple matters of principle. And how you treat people for who they are is one of those things that comes down to right and wrong, simple matters of decency and humanity. And for everyone here who has helped me and let me join you in that advocacy, thank you. It's something that I'm proud of. The fight against HB2 is something that I'm proud of. I've done some things that I feel really good about, that I can tell my grandkids someday that I was part of certain fights, and this has been one. And we have won so many good battles. We got some more to win. I know that we're looking to do a non-discrimination ordinance here in Mecklenburg. I think they've already done it in maybe 2 or 3 other places around North Carolina. So we see that gearing back up. That's good. That's healthy. We need to do that. There are some gaps that we still need to fill. We need to do that. So I'm fully supportive there. And that's it. Look, I think we're still headed in the right direction on these issues. I think that when we look back 4 years from where we are now, we're going to see a lot of progress having been made. And I want to be there with you. And I want to fight these fights with you because it's the right thing to do. I think I saw on the agenda that Jenna Wadsworth is speaking next. I think she's supposed to be the keynote speaker, which is wonderful. I just want to say 2 quick things about Jenna. They didn't ask me to say anything about Jenna, but I'm just going to do it real quick anyway. First of all, she gave one of the best political speeches I have ever seen in my life. And it was when she won the primary, the night that she won the primary. I still remember, remarkable. And second, to prepare for the race that I'm running now, one of the things that I did to get smart on agriculture issues, I put aside 2 hours and I watched all of her interviews when she was a statewide candidate. And I read her issues, her questionnaires, and I just took notes on a bunch of agriculture stuff. And one of the great things that she gave me that I've used since then multiple times is how farmers can be heroes in the coalition to combat climate change, because farmers overwhelmingly get this issue because they're highly attuned to weather and energy resilience. And Jenna, I hope you're listening right now, because I have used that several times just in the last few weeks, talking about bringing farmers on board and making them part of this coalition and making them the forefront of certain pieces of that coalition, because it's a little counterintuitive. It's not what people would normally think. So we want to make sure we show them as being part of the coalition. So I want to thank you for that, Jenna. And now I'll turn it over. Thank you for having me, Cameron. Good to see all of you. And as soon as we get our shots, I look forward to seeing you all in person. Hopefully we can still have HRC and we can still do Pride, and all of that comes in time for all those great events. Take care. Good to see you all.
Thank you so much, Senator Jeff Jackson. We appreciate you having with us. We do have one question from the chat, if you've got just a moment.
Sure.
So I know Representative Nassif Majid has been very passionate about introducing and supporting hate crime prevention, hate crime legislation. Do you have any updates on that? Any conversation going on that about the General Assembly right now?
The reason I don't is because we're still like really, really new into this session, and everyone's sort of filing their bills right now. And after you go through the bill filing phase, then you go into the support building phase, and we're still very much into the bill filing phase. I think in another 3 weeks, we'll start to have a sense of how much support various bills have. But right now, I really don't know. We've just started filing bills a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you so much. Again, we appreciate you so much for taking some time. I know that State Senator Salvador was on a train too, so we'll let you go so you can get home safely. But thank you again for joining us.
She's doing a great job. All you need to follow her on Twitter and Facebook. We need to help get her social media followerships up, because y'all, she's doing a wonderful job. Senator Salvador is going to make you all proud. She's doing a fantastic job.
And again, thank you so much. Jeff, would you like to go ahead and plug your links where we can find out more information?
Oh, sure. Just Google Jeff Jackson and see what comes up.
All right. All right. Well, thank you so much. And again, be safe.
Thanks. Take care.
Awesome. Again, if you have any questions that you would like to put you can put them in the chat there. Again, we just appreciate all our speakers for joining us tonight, again, from all over the state. The beauty of Zoom is that you can join from anywhere. It also means that we can all get fatigued from doing too many Zooms. So, but we appreciate everyone's time this evening. Next up, we do have Jenna Wadsworth. Jenna Wadsworth was born in Raleigh and holds the distinction of being the youngest woman ever elected to public office in North Carolina. She's currently serving in the Wake County Water and Soil Conservation Commission. She was recently re-elected to that post, but she was also our most recent nominee for Commissioner of Agriculture. Jenna Wadsworth is amazing. She is consistent. She is progressive and preaches about equity and intersectionality. I am very excited that she's chosen to join us again tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jenna Wadsworth.
Hey y'all, thank you all so much for having me tonight. I love whenever I get invited to join this group. Thank you so much, Cameron, for the invitation. And I do want to just give a shout out to my friend, Senator Jeff Jackson. Thank you so much for the kind remarks. And I'm always willing to sit down with you and chat about ag policy and what we can do better for the people who call this state home. I had the distinct pleasure of actually speaking to Senator Salvador a few weeks ago about potential options for cannabis legislation here in North Carolina. So I'm still out there fighting. For those of y'all who don't know me, my name is Jenna Wadsworth, and I currently serve the 1.2 million people who call our capital county, Wake County, home as the vice chair of the Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Supervisors. And as Cameron alluded to, I do have the distinct pleasure of being the youngest woman ever elected to public office in the state of North Carolina. That happened in the year 2010 when I was 21 years old, which is the youngest you can be according to the state constitution to get elected. Unfortunately, that record has not been broken as of yet. And, you know, I always reiterate that information less about, you know, it's not trying to boast about an accomplishment. It's so that way I can prove to all y'all that it's possible, right? So that way we understand that young people are not just the future, we are the now. We're capable of making real meaningful change in our communities. And I'm proud to have done work like that for the past decade in Wake County. And I'm also incredibly proud to have been your 2020 Democratic nominee for North Carolina Commissioner of Agriculture. And I spent every day for nearly 2 years working around the clock to fight to win this seat so that we could begin to create meaningful change in our state's agricultural industry, our state's biggest economic industry. And while we didn't get the outcome we had hoped for, I'm still here fighting for all of the issues that were and still are so important to the people who call North Carolina home. And tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about that race, but I also want to talk about how my identity as a queer person mattered in this race, why it matters that, you know, we are visible in all spaces, and how we also have an opportunity to prove to other folks, and especially to the next generation, that, you know, your identity, your sexual preferences, your sexual identity, your gender identity absolutely should have no bearing on your ability to be successful in this life and to achieve your dreams and goals and to make, you know, really big, important change in society. So on that topic, I think it's clear that, you know, change can be scary, but I still believe that people are hungry for it. And, you know, there's too much fear in our lives. I think this past year of having to live with COVID has really shown us just how true that is. But people want to look forward and they want to know that there's a brighter future on the horizon. And our campaign looked at bold solutions to addressing some of society's biggest issues, including climate change, food insecurity, which, by the way, is a very big issue for the queer community because housing is also an issue, as is wages. So all of that's interconnected, right? We also looked at addressing the criminal justice reform, in particular in regards to cannabis legalization. We talked about healthcare, especially in our rural communities, and we talked about economic freedom. You know, our race was about ushering in new ideas and transformative solutions to support our family farmers, to strengthen our rural communities, to protect our environment, to enhance urban agriculture, and to deliver on our promises to our children, which I really believe are responsibilities of every single person who is holding elected office. And it is incumbent upon them to deliver on those responsibilities, or else they shouldn't be sitting there occupying space. Now, we've seen, how my opponent, I'm sure many of y'all did, I ran against Steve Troxler, and we know that he was an entrenched Republican incumbent. Unfortunately, he is now serving a fifth term. And I think it became very clear during this race what he was capable of and what the world looked like under his tenure. And frankly, it was not enough. He hasn't done enough for the people who call this state home. And when we're talking about, and I know Cameron wanted me to talk tonight about how we move forward, what lies ahead for the North Carolina Democratic Party, especially after we saw the results of 2020 and we didn't get the victories we had hoped for. We lost seats in the legislature. Some really great folks like Senator Harper Peterson or Representatives Ray Russell or Christy Clark, oh my heart, didn't get reelected. And those were such important voices, such important champions, not just for equality, but for all the issues that we as Democrats hold near and dear. And, on top of that, we had what I would believe was the most qualified, most exciting, and most diverse slate for Council of State in the history of North Carolina. And, none of your challengers, none of these new candidates picked up any seats, which I think is just really, really unfortunate for our state. But how do we move forward? Well, that means that we have to look to the past. We have to really, truly assess what happened, figure out what was done wrong, what we could do better, and have that honest reflection period. And, maybe that means that feelings get hurt, but if we want to talk about progress, if we want to talk about winning in the future and actually accomplishing our goals as a party, we have to have those really important conversations. And it's not too soon to start having them. When I think about, for instance, with my opponent, what's happening to, Black farmers, to veteran farmers, to female farmers in the state, to queer farmers, it is absolutely reprehensible. It's not enough. It's not enough to tackle the climate crisis that's threatening the long-term economic viability of our agricultural sector. You have to admit that there's a problem and be able to talk about transformative solutions. I think about how many children in this state that's just, a beacon of agricultural goods and opportunities. How many children in our state are going to bed hungry at night? And that's true in the Mecklenburg area as well. And COVID-19 has only exacerbated some of those issues we've seen, in particular with childhood hunger. Since COVID-19 started, 4 out of 10 Black and Hispanic families have had a hard time putting food on the table. These are your neighbors. These are the people in North Carolina. When we talk about actually doing instead of just being seen, we have an opportunity to really stand up and speak out and show folks that even though Democrats didn't win the election, we're the ones who are going to show up to help and to lend a helping hand to our farmers, to our neighbors. I just keep thinking about what's happening with schools, what's happening with COVID right now. I think about how there are children that now we're going to send back to school, teachers that we're now going to send back into a dangerous situation, how Republicans aren't making that situation any better, and how a lot of those kids still aren't going to be able to focus on what they're supposed to be learning because their bellies are rumbling. Y'all, there are a lot of problems in North Carolina, and Republicans are not going to be the saviors. I don't want what happened in 2020 to discourage y'all from continuing to get out and support candidates, to help candidates up and down the ballot. We have to do that. I think about what's happening to our Latinx farm workers who are contracting COVID-19 at even, higher rates than the rest of the population, who a lot of times don't have access to healthcare and the same opportunities as the rest of us. I think about how corporate profit margins are still being prioritized over the people who call this state home. And, I think something that's really relevant to this conversation, I'm sorry, this has kind of become more of a free flowing, just kind of thinking about all of the issues that lie ahead and how we go about tackling them. And coming back to Steve Troxler for a little bit, I think, it's no secret that I was running. We had the opportunity to make history in North Carolina. If I had been elected, I would have been the first out LGBTQ Council of State member in the history of North Carolina. I also would have been the youngest out LGBTQ statewide office holder anywhere in the country's history. It does dishearten me that voters had the opportunity to prove that representation does indeed matter, and that didn't happen. But I also want to hope that because of me stepping up and being visible, being unapologetically a young bisexual woman running for this office, I hope that creates space for other people to stand up and speak out, to live their truth unapologetically. Because we did something, even though we did something that was so important and so meaningful. And, I have to say that one of the most remarkable things that happened to me throughout this cycle were the number of people who maybe couldn't yet freely live their truth, who reached out, who let us know that the visibility really did matter to them. But more than that, the parents of children who were non-binary or gender nonconforming or members of the LGBTQ community, hearing them say that it meant so much to their kids to be able to imagine themselves in spaces where they never would have been able to think that they would have been welcomed before. And so, my opponent regularly engaged in fear tactics and tried to discourage people from voting in their best interest. And they did everything from trying to make folks believe that I would be the one who would prevent you from being able to afford a dozen eggs and make you resort to slaughtering your own cows in your backyard. Yes, those were actual claims that were made. These folks slandered me in the press. They attacked my record of service. They distorted my qualifications. They questioned my faith and values, particularly in reference or used as dog whistles, when referring to my sexual identity. And time again, they tried to resort to distracting voters so they wouldn't be paying attention to the fact that my opponent had misspent tens of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money on luxury hotels and valet service. I mean, this is what Republicans are doing. And I think about how while he denied that the climate crisis was real, while he denied that Black farmers were not hurting, despite lawsuits that said otherwise, I think about how his corporate backers spent over $200,000 running ads against me with lies about my record. I think how, he and his friends spent upwards of $1 million against me in the last 2 months of the race because they were terrified, which I'm still actually really proud about because there's never been that much money spent in an ag race here in North Carolina. So, he was running scared. Don't let them tell you any differently. And, I think about how the National Republican State Leadership Committee spent their time attacking me. They had QAnon attack me, all because I had the audacity to film a TikTok when, it was indeed ironic that Trump did contract COVID, despite the fact that he regularly claimed that it wasn't a serious threat to the people of this country. And, as a result of that, I faced so much bigotry and hate. Y'all know that our trans brothers, sisters, and friends Republicans do not understand things that, are just different or that don't fit into a box. And for them, they think that, somehow it's morally okay to attack people who are different than themselves. And I think, our gender nonconforming friends or our trans friends are particularly difficult for Republicans to wrap their heads around just because of their very rigid ideological and backwards beliefs. And so when QAnon was attacking me, I regularly got memes or questions about whether or not I was undergoing a sex change. How, oh, your face looks right, but your voice still sounds like a man's. Comparisons to Michael Obama, which is both racist and sexist. I think, I know that the world would be a better place if we would just love and respect our neighbors and friends, which you would think is supposed to be a value that we should all be sharing. But anyways, what I thought was so funny to me is that I'm 5'2", 107 pounds soaking wet, but I was the scariest thing that Republicans had ever seen as a young queer woman running as an unapologetic progressive in the South for ag commissioner. And that's when I really realized that this race was so much bigger than myself. And what we did was not just live through a moment, but what we did was build a movement, one that I'm hoping will continue to endure and ignite change, because we were the first to unapologetically speak out and stand up and shine light into dark places. And, there's so many people on this call that were a part of that, including Cameron and Ginger. And I could go on and on, Jenny. And so, running was the most important and meaningful thing I've ever done in my life. And I really hope that we continue to encourage candidates who, come from diverse backgrounds and perspectives to run unapologetically as themselves and to stand true to their values. But y'all, it is very, very difficult. And if we have a party where, everything becomes an echo chamber, or where we continue to kowtow to moderates and corporate backers, we're not going to see the change that we need. We're not going to get enough stuff done. We should be very, very concerned about what's going to happen in 2022. This ridiculousness of having to wait to be able to get some sort of bipartisan support federally when, Democrats won, and then not seeing us move forward when it comes to seeing $2,000 checks, which, by the way, there's been a bait and switch there. I think, everybody's getting wrapped up in the fact it's $1,400 or $2,000 checks. We've kind of forgotten that we didn't even get the $1,400 check, right? On top of that, we couldn't even vote to convict an actual criminal who led an armed insurrection against our government, who tried to lead a coup. And yet now we're in danger here in North Carolina of seeing Laura Trump come down and run for U.S. Senate. She's polling higher than most of the other Republicans. Y'all, we do not want the Trump family to become a political dynasty. We will never get rid of them, and we will never get rid of or silence this hateful rhetoric from the extreme right if we allow the Trump name to continue to hold a position of power in government. We've really got to continue fighting. The other thing I would say is that 2020 was honestly the perfect storm of misguided leadership on both state and federal levels, combined with a global pandemic, record unemployment, massive social justice movements, the deterioration of human and immigrant rights, the eroding away of our civil rights, especially as queer folks, the galvanizing point for climate change, a resurgence in organizing for the passage of ERA, the Time's Up movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, organizing around women's rights and violence against our gender, violence against our trans brothers and sisters and friends. We have an opportunity moving forward to say that just because our candidates didn't win didn't mean that we're going to stop fighting for those issues that really, really matter. Organizing is more important than ever. And I know I've gone past my time, but here's my thing, y'all. We have to push for meaningful investments in organizing efforts year round. The reason why we lost in places like rural North Carolina, the reason why we lost in ancestrally Democratic places in the northeastern part of the state, is because we didn't show up and knock doors. And now, look, I have been some of the strictest online when you hear me talking about what's happening to COVID-19, wearing your mask, social distancing, making good choices, caring about your neighbors. But the reality is there are people in places in rural North Carolina, our virtual town halls didn't reach them because there isn't internet, or because they're working 2 to 3 jobs that they still had to show up to physically during the pandemic. They're doing all they can to make to make rent or to put food on the table for their kids who are now at home 24 hours a day. They don't have access to the internet. They don't have anyone else to help take care of anyone else in their family. They've now the caregiver for their elderly family members. And the thing is, they feel like they don't matter. And our Democratic Party hasn't always done a great job of helping to, let those folks know that we do indeed care about them and their situations. We can't just wait until 6 to 7 months before a presidential election and come knocking on their door every 4 years and then listening to them and saying, hey, what matters to you? What do you care about? What we have to do is we have to invest in year-round organizing. This is our opportunity as a party, as a very active group, y'all, auxiliary, to push the North Carolina Democratic Party to change their budgetary priorities to align with the actual strategies that will ensure that we win elections going forward, and that allow for us to actually serve the people who call the state home, who create opportunities for us to see more Democrats get elected in the future, even with gerrymandering, because y'all, that redistricting is going to be an issue, especially since Republicans took back power in the state legislature. I'm someone who believes that we have to vote our values. I'm someone who believes that it's important to support candidates who are unapologetic in their advocacy and efforts to creating a more equal, just, and sustainable future. I think it's important to stand up for candidates who speak the truth, even if it's maybe not popular, but it's the right thing to do. And that's why I appreciate so many of y'all always having my back. And I just, think that we have a real opportunity when it comes to electing the next chair of the Democratic Party. We need to make sure that we as queer folks, we as women, we as people of color, we as young people are not the bargaining chip, which so often happens in politics. So look, I love y'all. I am so grateful for all the support and help you gave me. I'm sorry, Cameron, for running over, but this is what you get when you give a politician a platform. And the other thing I'll tell y'all, this is the last little, I'm just really, really excited about this. We found out right before the end of the campaign, so a lot of times we didn't get to really kind of celebrate or talk about it. I have it written here somewhere, but what was just really, really cool is we got a notification from the Library of Congress about a week before the end of the election saying that because of what we had done, I was being included in the Library of Congress's digital archives for LGBTQ politics and politicians as a historically significant candidate and race. And so they included all of our online materials, which I just think is really, really cool. And it goes to show that, we did make a mark. We will be remembered for what we did. What we did was important, and it was the first step in seeing a more equal and just future for all of us.
Thank you so much, Jenna, for your continued leadership and work. And I so appreciated that immediately after the campaign was over, obviously that is a heartbreaking moment, but you were like, I'm not done. I'm not going anywhere. The work still needs to be done. So thank you so much for joining us and for speaking and sharing your vision tonight. And I know we'll look forward to whatever your next steps are in the Democratic Party and for our state. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, we are just a few minutes behind schedule, which is actually really good considering we did have 3 politicians. No, I'm kidding. But we are all a little bit ahead of schedule. So we're going to take a brief recess for just a few minutes so you get time to use the restroom, grab a drink, mainly so I can have a brain break from moving all the pieces around, make sure we're ready for our next steps for our election. I want to shout out Lisa Ellsworth from Democratic Women who jumped on. We also have Judge Reggie McKnight, Judge Rex Marvel. We have several candidates running for office. At our normal meetings, we obviously would give them each some time to speak. Tonight, we're busy on our schedule, but I just want to thank you all for joining on and for your time tonight. You are always welcome, and most nights, we would give you like 30 seconds to a minute, but we're gonna give everyone kind of a 5-minute break. I'm gonna allow everyone to unmute themselves. I'm gonna step away, but if you wanna chat while you're in here, that's great. And again, thank you all to our speakers. Yeah. And Huntersville Commissioner Lance Munger was with us as well. David Hammond, who is a congressional district representative for the LGBTQ Dems at the state level. Ginger Walker, who is our state LGBTQ Dems president. I'm so sorry if I missed anyone. Okay, everyone, we're just going to give people a few more seconds to come back in. But at this point in the meeting, it turns over to our Vice President, Cameron Joyce, who will be our chair for the next little bit of the meeting. So I'll turn it over to him as our Vice President. And yeah, so we'll probably give people a few more seconds to come back, but it is now in our chair's hands.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Just to make sure that everyone has enough time to look at the list that I've created, in your chat box, you'll see that I'm posting the names of the current dues paid members that are registered Democrats and live in Mecklenburg County from the list of people on our call right now. So these members will be able to vote tonight. So please check to make sure if your name is not on our list and you believe that you are eligible to vote, please send a direct message to either myself, or Mason Kress as treasurer, and we'll double check our list to make sure that you're qualified to vote. To go over the rules for our election tonight, as posted on your screen right now, I'll just read what we have. First, we'll have nominations that will be accepted from the floor. So any dues paid member is able to nominate or second a nomination. No additional nominations will be accepted once the nomination for the position has been closed. Once nominations are closed, each nominee will be allowed to speak for a minute in order of nomination. If additional members wish to speak, they'll be given 30 seconds each until a motion to close debate has occurred and is approved. In accordance with our bylaws, voting is only open to eligible dues-paying members who have attended one meeting in the past calendar year. Eligible members are registered to vote as Democrats in Mecklenburg County and have paid dues. A simple majority of those voting is sufficient to have determined a winner. The chair may only receive motions from those who have raised their hands, and the treasurer, for the purpose of this meeting, will assist the chair in facilitating the order in which the hands have been raised. All right, and we have one additional name. I believe I left off Christian Kano. Let me add him to our list, or let me check and make sure he's on our list. Yeah, I have him on our list, Cameron. So Christian, you'll also be able to vote tonight. And I think I have one more. Let's see. Okay. Ginger, will you link that? Will you relay that message to? Okay, Jenny. Will you relay that message to Cameron and to Mason as well, Jenny? Thank you.
I will, Cameron. I just saw it come through Act Blue
Awesome.
earlier today.
Thank you. I'll add Jenny to our list. Cameron, do you have control of the slides? Will you go ahead and move over to the next slide? Okay. And Mason, I believe if you'll keep an eye on whose hands raised first for any nominations, we'll open the floor for nominations for chapter president. I'll quickly read the duties of the president shall be to uphold and enforce the provisions of the bylaws, to organize and administer the organization, to preside over all meetings, to appoint chairpersons of standing committees, to represent the organization at all official functions, to serve on the Mecklenburg County Democratic Party Executive Council, to submit a final report to the chair of the Mecklenburg County Democratic Party at the conclusion of each year, and to chair the executive board. So as the nomination is open, it looks like we have Xavier. Xavier, if you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'd like to say thank you to everybody tonight for being on the meeting as well, and respect to the board of directors. You guys have done such an amazing job. I would like to nominate for the president of Mecklenburg chapter of the LGBTQ Democrats, William Cameron Pruette.
Okay. And according to our rules tonight, I think we are going to look for a second. Is there anyone that would like to second this nomination?
I'll second it. Larry Ferry.
Thank you, Larry. All right. Cameron Pruette is our first nomination. The floor is still open. Are there any other nominations for this position? Hearing none, with no hands raised, we'll close the nomination and we'll move into voting for this position. Just with a voice of, or if acclamation, you can, well, we don't have a mute. We'll let you raise your hand on the screen or in the chat if you'd like to vote to have Cameron Pruette as our president for the next 2 years. Please raise your hand on video or in chat. All right, thank you. And any abstention? All right.
Friends, if you could raise your hand on the Zoom call and keep it raised for me.
Cameron, whenever, or excuse me, Mason, whenever you're finished recording the votes, we'll move to the next.
Okay, I have counted all of the raised hands.
Thanks, Mason. That'll be the end of our process for president. Congratulations, Cameron. Thank you for your work so far. We look forward to working with you for the next 2 years. And then for
Yes, he as we have no more nominations, that would be Cameron Pruette passing.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Cameron and Mason, for that part of the process. I just want to say a few short words before we head into our secretary position. I want to thank you all for your support, for paying dues, for reading our endless amount of emails. And I actually have a quick poll concerning our emails. Let me make sure it's checked too. About how frequently we're sending you emails. So feel free to answer that. We do try to keep in touch with you, and we will be working on many other initiatives and ways to do that moving in the future. We did a lot over this last year, as I talked about at the beginning of the meeting, and we have a lot moving forward between non-discrimination ordinances, our scorecard moving forward to make sure that we are pushing and advocating for candidates, not just in general elections, but in primaries where we have a large voice in Mecklenburg County, and continuing to be a partner with our auxiliary caucuses, the Democratic Women, the African American Caucus, the Hispanic American Caucus, the Veterans Caucus, the Seniors Caucus. We need to build a broad coalition in our county to advocate for real equity and justice and change. And so I want to thank you for your support. And I hope that moving forward, we can make real change in our county. And it looks like, oddly enough, no one has said that they get too many emails from us. So you said it, not me. We will find ways to communicate as well. Maybe also trying to do very sporadic text messaging as well. So thank you. And thank you for all the comments in the chat. We'll go ahead and end that polling there. And I'm going to share the results so that everyone can see. So most of you think you're being just the right amount or a little bit more informed. So we will try to find ways to share more information, and the person who would be most responsible for doing that kind of thing would be a secretary. So I do have a hand raised. Is anyone raising their hand to be recognized, or do we still have hand raised from voting?
I think that's a leftover hand raise.
Okay, awesome. Let's make sure. Yeah. So I've cleared all hands. If you do need to be recognized before we vote on the next thing, please let me know by raising your hand again. I do have a hand raised. Nope, it went back down. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure. And if you have anything in the chat, Mason and Cameron, it is hard for me to run a PowerPoint, record, and look at chat. So if one of you could nudge me if something happens in the chat that I need to know about, I'd appreciate it. Moving on to our next position. This is for a 2-year term. In our organization, we stagger our positions so that there's some institutional continuity for them. So the duties of the secretary shall be to maintain the files of the organization, to record the minutes of all meetings, verify memberships, maintain an accurate membership list of the organization, to submit all official records to local archives, and with the approval of the president, to conduct the official correspondence of the organization. Persons as specified by the executive board will be sent notices of each executive board meeting. The secretary should send notices at least 4 weeks in advance of the meeting. Notices will be accompanied by the proposed minutes, the most recent meeting, and the agenda for the upcoming meeting. And so, of course, our eligibility rules from prior still apply. And so I will entertain nominations at this time. with hands raised. I currently see one hand raised. I'm going to make sure I've scrolled down through all the way. All right, and as the first hand I saw go up, the chair recognizes Xavier Boston.
Thank you again, board, for recognizing, and thank you for voting for Cameron again for another an actual total president. He really does love the things that he does with this organization, and you guys all are such a huge part of it. And I know you all intrinsically through him. And so one of the things that I really want to do is make sure that the team is absolutely beautiful to continue on the great work that you guys are doing. And I think that a really great secretary, in my opinion, would be Lori or Laurel Grauer. I'd like to nominate Laurel Grauer for secretary.
The chair has a nomination on the floor for Laurel Grauer. Is there a sufficient second available? If you'd like to second, please raise your hand or submit in chat. Jenny, I think I see your hand and you unmuted. Are you seconding the nomination?
Yes, I second Laurel Grauer for secretary.
Awesome. The chair has received a nomination and a sufficient second. The chair will entertain either another nomination or a motion to close nominations at this time. I am trying to also make sure I'm looking through videos. In case you cannot raise your hand, you may also point in the chat, post in the chat at this time, and I will recognize those to make sure that we are including everyone. Seeing no other hands raised at this time, I will entertain a motion to close nominations.
So moved. Mason Kress.
Okay, and I see Colette has her hand raised. Do you second the motion, Colette? She does. All right, Colette seconds the motion. If there are any opposed, please speak up now or this motion will proceed by acclamation. This motion carries in the eyes of the chair. We will, again, just as a matter of formality, we do only have one nomination. If you will, raise your hand if you support Laurel Grauer for a 2-year term in the position of secretary. All right, I count those hands as I see them coming in. Thank you, thank you. If you're unable to raise your hand, I'm looking at video hands as well and counting those as well for this moment. So I see Ryan and Rob. Thank you, I see you, Larry. And if there's anyone else who needs to post in the chat, I will count those. You can send those to me directly at this time if you need to. Okay.
Consent is raising her hand.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, and you may put your hands down. And let me see, there's a lower hand feature here that I can lower everyone's hand. And then we will ask for any opposed. All right, seeing none, congratulations, Laurel. Would you like to say a few words before we move on to the next part of the meeting?
Few words, keeping it brief. That is a struggle for me, but not just because of my love of politics, my cultural heritage, but as a recovering English major, so all those things are against me when it comes to being brief. I apologize. I'll just increase the speed of my talk. Thank you so much. It's really an honor. Cameron, I really love what everyone is saying, what you're doing with the organization and just the broad-based coalition. It was an honor to work with you with the non-discrimination ordinance and to speak at the the commissioners meeting. There's so much I'm learning here, but it's also some experience I'd like to bring in as far as previously doing communications for other organizations. And I'd love to work with you and other leaders as well as the base to see what are other ways. I was actually one of the people to list. I would like to be more informed because sometimes I know MailChimp is very finicky. So what are other platforms and ways we can get communication and information out, as well as who are other spokespeople that we can already work with or possibly train up to also speak and broaden our network and people's awareness of the amazing work that's happening within the LGBTQ Mech Democrats. So I'm excited to be part of this adventure with y'all. I can finally say y'all 2.5 years being here. So thank you so much. It's an honor to work with you, and I look forward to this amazing engaging work that we're doing in 2021 and beyond.
Thank you so much, Laurel, again, and thank you everyone for your support of our organization. In the last few minutes, the last poll is kind of one of the most important polls. We are going to figure out when we're going to meet this year. So a couple of organizations have moved when they meet. So I'm going to ask you kind of when you want us to meet. I have tried my best because we want to avoid any LGBTQ organizations. I also want to avoid some of our auxiliaries because I want to make the African American Caucus and Democratic Women's meetings. So we can't meet on those nights when we can avoid it. So I'm going to post those up here in the chat. So you should have a poll there you can vote on and when you would like to meet. I'll give you a couple seconds because there's a lot of words on that one and timing to consider. And you can vote for all that apply there. And we'll leave that up for about 30 more seconds. And it looks like we will end at 8 o'clock or earlier. So we're still going to make it on time. And again, I thank you so much, everyone. I know some of you have been here since 6, so I want to be respectful of your time. So if we can get out a few minutes before 8, I think we'll appreciate that too. All right, so it looks like meeting at this time, though of course our sample bias might be here because you all were able to come this time. Of course, you'd like to meet at this time again. But we will go and meet moving forward third Wednesdays at 6 p.m. So next month, put that on your calendars and we'll make the Facebook events and send the email out for all those, since that seems to work best for most. Again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I know that again, you could be doing a million other things. In our last few minutes, I want to recognize people who are running for office who've been able to stay with us. So there are a couple people I think who are running for state party positions that are on the call. And then also at least one person running for local office on the call. So we'll let them speak briefly. I just ask that you say your name, pronouns, and then maybe about 30 seconds, just to give people time and so we can move forward. Valencia, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. And I wasn't expecting to speak tonight, Cameron. You know, I just like to come on and participate. But yes, my name is Valencia Handy, you guys. And I am one of your candidates for third vice, North Carolina Democrat Party for the vice chair. And I want to say that I appreciate you for giving me the opportunity to speak, Cameron. And I want everyone to know that I'm running because I want to make a change. And I want to focus on these coalitions that you all are speaking on and organizing. That's what my main goal is. I ask for your vote. I will put my information in the chat. And I welcome your comments and I welcome your advice. So just give me a call. And thank you so much, Mr. Cameron. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valencia. We also have our treasurer's report. So I'm going to go through the next two people and then Mason's going to remind me and nudge me about that again because I type up an agenda and then I forget what's on it. So that's great. We next up have Miss Lee, who's running for state party chair. So she's recognized next. And then Billy Madelon will close us out for the people running for office.
Hey, Cameron. Thank you, guys. I came into the meeting late. Congratulations to your new officers. Hey, Mecklenburg, LGBTQ Dems. I'm Eva Lee, she, her. Happy to be here tonight. And again, an hour ago, I was like, I know there's a meeting tonight. And I hope you guys recorded some of those fantastic speeches. And I shared your one of your things recently. So I'm running for state chair. I am offering a progressive alternative to some of the candidates who are oriented more DCCC and some who are DNC oriented. I am a progressive and I'm offering a platform that empowers local precinct chairs, that empowers auxiliaries, that makes sure that the seats at the table also come with an open line of conversation, that congressional candidates, and I see at least one former congressional candidate in the room, are empowered from the get-go pre-primary. I mean, I'm saying that with all sincerity. In 2018, when I started becoming very active, the first thing I did was try to find all the congressional candidates and get them in a room And, I will continue that. And we are going to have 1,500 to 2,500 Democrats running for office in this state. And we need to empower all of them, connect them to the precinct chairs, and make our party more powerful on all platforms. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Eva. And then Billy, if you're still with us, you have 30 seconds. If you want to just talk. I know his camera's off. He might have stepped away for a minute. That's okay. All right. If he comes back, that's great. Yes, the important information that needs to be shared is our treasurer's report. So I'm going to turn it over to Mason, who is going to go through our financials and where we're standing as an auxiliary chapter.
Hey, thanks everybody. Mason Kress, Mecklenburg County LGBTQ Dems Treasurer, pronouns he, him, and I will keep this short. As of right now, we are standing at $518.41 in the bank. We have had 8 new members pay dues since the beginning of the year, totaling up to $77.50. Which is not an exhaustive list of people who were eligible to vote at this meeting, because we have rolled over from the previous year. But if you have not paid dues yet in 2021, you will have to eventually, and I urge you to get that in as soon as possible. Our major expenses for the previous cycle include a billboard program. We ran a billboard in support of voter outreach, get out the vote, trying to get people to the polls. Between October 13th and 19th, we spent $440 on that billboard, which sounds like a lot, but it did end up, we did end up getting some really good numbers of clicks on the website and very good numbers of people that we were able to get to the polls specifically from that billboard. I would personally rate it a success. I have filed thus far, I have filed the form CRO 3100 with the State Board of Elections. That is to say, we do not intend to take in or put out more than $1,000 in this election cycle. Now, I'm hoping that we can break that record, which will mean I will have to refile that form and start sending reports to the Board of Elections, because that would mean that we are doing very well financially. So we're gonna try and meet those targets and make me have to do more work. That, I believe, is it for the report that I have prepared. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Mason. If you have any questions for Mason, you can ask those now. You can unmute yourselves. Yes, I put our donate information in the chat. If you know me, and especially if you work on the board, you know I am the worst at asking for this. We're in the middle of a pandemic. My job has changed from when I started. I wouldn't want to ask me for $20, right? So the reason we ask you for money is because of things like our billboard, which actually helped about 12,000 clicks to the County Board of Elections website, right? It was a blip billboard, it was a pay-per blip. We did amazing work with that, right? We're talking about building a scorecard, and that's great. We've got a diverse group of people who are going to represent a bunch of interests to help score and rank that. We then need to communicate that out, right? We need to send out mailers for that. We would like to make a billboard that's district specific. I have the Facebook targeting down and the digital billboard mapped out to where each city council district, I can make a billboard saying this person scored excellent. To execute that, it's going to take money, unfortunately. It is not a great thing I like about our politics. It is not the way it should have to be, but this is the world we live in and we need to fight for change. So there is that donate link there. That money goes to those things. If you donate monthly, then you can make sure that I'm not paying for our MailChimp and Zoom anymore. Okay, for the past year, that has been a donation in kind from me. So if you make a monthly contribution of $20, you can make sure that we have Zoom meetings and MailChimp emails that go out to you regularly. If you donate, more than that, then we can find ways to educate our voters. And again, I have to just say kudos to while she's still on the meeting with her camera on. Colette Alston and the African American Caucus have been tireless supporters of our auxiliary and our efforts. I'm so excited for the scorecard they're doing. when there was a little bit of waffling. You may have heard about from County Commission, the African American Caucus sent a message, and that message was heard. And so we just appreciate all that they're doing. Go to their meetings too. They're not on the same night as ours are, so you can make both, and just continue to build those relationships. So yes, I ask for your money, and if you can't give money, then I ask for your support and help in other ways. But I'll kind of open up the floor if anyone has questions for Mason or me or anything else before we close out the meeting. Hey, Jenny.
Hey, so our primary marketing tool is for those things this year is going to be the billboards, or are we doing any like Facebook ads or anything like that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Currently, Facebook and Instagram have paused political marketing. They did it on November 4th for obvious reasons, and we're glad that they suddenly care about our democracy and politics. Unfortunately, those are still completely frozen. So I cannot promote this meeting tonight as a Facebook ad or Instagram ad or any of those things. So yes, when that gets resolved or revised, we would love to do that. So we also would like to print off, a lot of other groups do print offs that they hand out. Larry Ferry, who was on earlier, can tell you all about handing out those things too. We also have access through Vote Builder. We can identify at least some people who've identified as LGBTQ, so that when we make our scorecard, we can send that out to all the registered Democrats who have identified, who've been able to identify as LGBTQ. We can message them. We can also target some of those zip codes where we know that there are clusters of LGBTQ people in our city. And then also, again, our scorecard has 4 aspects to it, as you may have seen online, right? So we're not, yes, LGBTQ plus equality is there, but we know LGBTQ people exist in all aspects of society. So racial justice is an LGBTQ issue. Affordable housing is an LGBTQ plus issue. And so we know that these are interconnected links. So our scorecard, depending on how much money we get, right? I could target a whole zip code, and send everyone our scorecard, which I would love to do. But if not, then we will have to be very targeted. We did several door knockers last time around, especially for the judges. So we focused on the bottom of the ballot because we lose people. When they get to the bottom of the ballot, they don't vote. We have a lot to grapple with because we are a state that elected Governor Cooper and did not elect Jerry Beasley, Laura Cubbage, Jessica Holmes, Jenna Wadsworth, right? We did not elect women. We did not elect Yvonne Lewis Hawley, right? So there are women, Black women, women of color, queer women who are fighting these races and not getting the votes. So we have to speak up for our agenda, speak up for our candidates. Yeah.
And one other question, what kind of plans are we initially doing for 2022 races? Is there any legwork we're talking about or discussing or kicking around a little bit?
Yeah, so a lot of that is going to come from once we get a better picture of what the state and county party look like. Eva Lee talked about on the 27th, we're going to elect our next slate of state executive leaders. And so really we follow a lot of what they're going to do and also see what, the auxiliaries are having elections this year too, right? So the Democratic women just had their new slate of officers. So it's really getting a better picture of what we're working with. As we may have talked about earlier in the meeting, census results are delayed this year. So the mayor and city council might not happen in 2021 at all. It may be a 2022 question. And if that's the case, then we'll be able to broaden our scorecard out to some of those other races, so that we can target them too. So yes, we're looking forward to that. Our initial goal was that this would kind of be our good run for our scorecard. Does this respond to the needs of the community? Does it respond to the candidates? Does it communicate well? And then 2022 would have been the next iteration of that scorecard, right? We may have to just work as we go, right? And that's why we put 4 meetings into it, have a diverse panel to review it, and hopefully that'll be good. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, there are a couple things in the chat. Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much, Eva and Valencia. Any other questions or anything on the chat, or I will let you go because it is almost 8. So I'm going to let you go at 8. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All right, moved. Are there any opposed to this motion to adjourn, or I'll accept it via acclamation? Hearing none, thank you again so much, everyone, for coming tonight. MeckDem.LGBTQ, please, if you reach out on Facebook, email, I see those. So if you have any questions, suggestions, comments, critiques, things I'm doing terribly wrong, please tell me, okay? My inbox has been full since this NDO started. You can't tell me anything I haven't heard, all right? So please just message me everything you can do, and thank you so much for all your support. Have a great night, y'all.